We are continuing our series on different Chachamim and their Sfarim from Chachamim Morocco. And here I want to introduce to you to a Gadol that I'm sure you've heard of many times, and everyone says that this is the greatest rabbi. But here we're really talking about one of the greatest Rabbanim ever that Morocco produced. And we'll hear a little bit about his life. His name was Rabbi Yehuda ibn Attar. And not to be confused with Rabbi Haim ben Attar, of course, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, which is also one of the greatest Chachamim. But Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar was known in Morocco as El Kbir, the great rabbi. He is actually buried right, if you go into the kever, into the Bet HaKvarot of Fez, there's the La Solika, and his kever is right there as well. And we're going to learn a little bit about his life, and what's written on his kever actually is something very interesting as well. Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar was born in the city of Fez in 1655. Elul, during Elul, Tav Tet Vav. And it's written about it. We don't know too much about him, about where he learned. He definitely learned by his two great Rabbanim, which were the Dayanim at the time, the great Rav Vidal Tzarfati, which was a direct descendant, Ben Acharben, from Rabbeinu Tam, and Rashi, that is. And they moved from Ashkenaz to Fez sometime in the 1500s, it seems to be. And this is Rav Vidal Tzarfati and his contemporary Rabbi Menachem Serero were great Rabbanim, which we don't know too much about as well, but they were the Rabbanim of Rav Yehuda ben Attar. And when he was young already, people knew that he was destined for greatness. But he took on a different path. He says, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to support myself as well as being fully involved in Torah. So there are many stories about them. Rabbi Yosef Misas has a sefer called Nachalat Avot on Pirkei Avot, phenomenal Sfarim. And there Rabbi Yosef Misas writes in Krach Bet Amud Kuf Nun Zayin that, like it said in the Ktavim, that a person should love Torah, but he should make his Torah ikar and his parnasa on the side. That was Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. He was a tzoref. A tzoref means he was a blacksmith, but he created earrings, he created jewelry, and till today, this is a legend, till today, there are people in Morocco, Jews and non-Jews alike, who have his things, and they keep it as a sigura. They say, this was made by Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. This was made by Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar, and it's supposedly a great sigula. We're going to see. There's phenomenal stories over here. So either way, what his custom was that he would go shacharit, go to his store. When he saw that he made enough to live that day, shut the store, and he continued on his Torah. That was Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. Said Rabbi Yosef Misas, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Obviously, it's a very high level, but that was Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar lived in a period of time which was very rough. It was a time where the Melech Mulai Ismail was rampaging, and he was really plundering the cities. And he built a castle in Meknes, and he would persecute Fez at the time. It was very bad for the Jews. But somehow, as I said this many times, this was the golden era in Morocco. Somehow, in the early 1700s, this was the golden era where it produced unbelievable Talmidei Chachamim. And the head of them was Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. This was the famous Bedin Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar, and he had his students, Rabbi Yaakov Malka, and the more famously known Rabbi Yaakov ben Tzur, the Ya'avetz. Ya'avetz was the Sofer Bedin originally, and he considered himself a student, even though he wasn't one of the main students. He considered himself, and this is just to just try to understand at the beginning how people related to Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. Rabbi Yaakov ben Tzur writes in a sefer called Et Lechol Chefetz, Haya, about Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar, Haya Av Bedin veGadol Hador bechol Artzot HaMa'arav veEfshar Gar beArtzot HaMizrach. He was a Gadol Hador in all of the Western countries, that means Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and also and maybe also in Artsot HaMizrach. I mean, he didn't know. He was living in Morocco. They didn't have Instagram in those days. Also in Artsot HaMizrach. וכבר אמרו החכם מופלג בדור אין לסב לפניו בהרבה פסחים. And like it's written that the great of the generation, you're not allowed to lean during Arba Kosot. You're sitting by him Lela Seder, so that's the same thing by him. And this is how they related to him. That's why he got his name as El Kbir. But this is what's amazing, and this is how we tell what Gedolei Ador are. The greater they are, the more humble they are. He was known as a tremendous power. The Jews and the non-Jews alike respected him tremendously. I want to tell you a few stories just to give us the idea. Some stories are set over by Maran Achida. Maran Achida has a few times where he speaks about him and how important his legacy was and his writings. Here I'm reviewing the Sefer Minchat Yehuda, which is drashot of his. I'm not going to get to the actual Sefer because I just want to speak about him. There's also his Teshuvot written in Mishpat Tzedakah B'Yakov, a lot of his Piskei Dinim. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol yom bidvaro. Amen. Okay, so number one is the following. This is where his Anava. This story was also written by Rabbi Yosef Misas in Nachalat Avot, Krach Vav, Amud Rish Pedalid. It says, when he was, and I'm getting a lot of this information from the introduction of the Minchat Yehuda written by Rabbi Moshe Amar from Bnei Brak. And he puts out a lot of Sfarim. Very wonderful Jew. And he writes the following, that once there was a Jew who was coming from outside of the city. He was carrying a very heavy bag of dried figs. And he saw another Jew there and he couldn't carry the load. He says, please carry this for me a little bit so I could rest. Now there's a mitzvah in the Torah, is that when you see somebody that is having a hard time with the load, azov ta'azov imo, right? There's halakha nowadays. If a guy, you see a guy with a flat tire, I said this before, Rav Ovadia says that the way that you fulfill the mitzvah is you help him with a flat tire. But the Yehuda ben now the other Jew who was holding the heavy bag, he saw Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. He didn't know it was Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. He's holding a heavy bag. It's half of his face is being covered. How does he know who's next to him? So he says, please help me out. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar said, sure. He takes the whole bag and he starts lugging it. Imagine the Gadol Ador, the giant of the generation. He's holding imagine you see that. You think the president would do that? You think the president of the United States would do that? I don't think so. And when he saw the Rav, eventually there was another Jew who saw the Rav. Quickly he released him and he says, oh, Rav, what are you doing? And then the person who gave him the bag was so embarrassed. He said, please, Mechila, Rav, I had no idea it was you. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar answered him, my son, I don't understand. I was zoche in the mitzvah of azov ta'azov imo. When am I ever going to get a chance of azov ta'azov imo? There was a few other stories where there was a person, a guy who had a store. In Morocco, they have these like stores on the bottom, and they would like these kiosks, right? Like Jeremy's dream over here, and but you have to eat lunch eventually, right? So what are you gonna do? So he said what he's gonna. He asked that somebody could take him over. So he asked Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar, come on over and come on over and take over the store. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar said, no problem. He sat in the store. Yaakov ben Sur walks in front. The back of his student says, Rabbi, what are you doing over here? He says, what do you mean? I have the chance of helping out a Jew to get a little bit of rest for his restaurant. How can I deny him? That was the Gedolei Ador, that as great as they are, but when somebody needs my help, so what? I'm nothing. That was Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. But one thing that he was known for, and this the Chida brings down, is that the non-Jews respected him tremendously, and they knew when they had a disaccord with the Jews, they would go to Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar and he would resolve it. So there was one time a person, there was a few stories about this. I'm going to mention to you one story about this, that there was a Jew and a non-Jew that were partners. And the Jew eventually, after a little bit of time, got a little bit greedy, and he said, you know what, I'm going to siphon some of the earnings, and I'll say we suffered losses. So the non-Jew eventually caught on, and he said, listen, these people are tricking, my partner is tricking me. Let's go to Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. So they sat down, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar saw what was going on. He was a smart dayan, and he tells the Jew, listen, there's nothing I can do to disprove if you're But I'm just going to tell you, if you got blinded by the money, by the shine of the money, your eyes are going to get blinded as well. So the Jew says, okay, fine, whatever. The rabbi says what he says. Got up, and he and he started walking out, and he became blind right away, and he couldn't believe it. He went back to the Rav and he started crying. And the Rav said, just like when there's a bullet that's shot, you can't take it back. I can't take back over here that you lost your eyesight. There's nothing you can do, but don't worry. You'll have strength in your other kochot, and you'll be strong in other areas. But your eyesight you can't get back. You can't get again. That was, in other words, and the goy came afterwards. He wanted to thank Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. He wanted nothing to do with it. I don't want to benefit from this. But it's written on Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar's kever. Next time you're in the Bet HaKevrot of Fez, you could see that it's written over there that Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar has it was known that anybody who had a machloket in Betin up until recently, anybody in machloket in Betin, they would go to the kever of Yehuda ben Attar, and you'd have to swear that you're saying the truth over there, al shem hachacham, because there was a few stories already that people did that and they were wrong and they dropped dead. I mean, it's as simple as that. There's another story as well, as simply said, they dropped dead. Now, 3 more stories very quickly I want to say. Number 1 is a famous story the Chida brings in Kitzur Zichron Ma'asiyot, Sefer Achida, Amud Tzadichet, that he was a blacksmith of the king, right? And he didn't want to be Mechalel Shabbat. So the other blacksmith organization, the union, said, what is this? This is a mechutzaf. He's going to come and he's going to go against the king. He has to work on Shabbat. They took him, they threw him into the pit of lions. And his name was Yehuda, right? Aryeh. The king saw him, and he saw that the lions weren't eating him. See, the story they usually say, they think it's about the Rabbi ben Attar, the story with the lions. It was really, I think they're confusing with the Yehuda ben Attar. And he saw that he was together with the lions, and the lions weren't eating him. So the king said like this, I asked for a blacksmith, I didn't ask for an angel. And he took him out. That's what the Chida brings down. Rabbi Yosef ben Naim Melchei Rabbanan brings another story that one of the greatest Rabbanim as well of Morocco was Rabbi Eliezer di Abila, buried in Rabat. Harav Ada, Rabbi Eliezer di Abila. And Rabbi Eliezer di Abila was once writing a psak din, and he was arguing on a psak from Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. He looks up, he sees a giant lion in front of him, roaring. Oh my gosh, he runs out of the Bet Midrash. They thought the lion was going to kill him. So they said, there's no lion over here. The people around him told him there's no lion over here. So he looked into it, and he saw, well, he was obviously writing against the lion, the Yehuda ben Attar, and that wasn't such a good idea. So he came in form of a lion. Okay, these are great levels, but we see from Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar. One last story I'm going to leave you with that is chut till today is that in Morocco, the chief rabbi in Morocco that was niftar in 1985, his name is Rabbi Didier Monsonego. Rabbi Didier Monsonego he was part of the Beddin of Fez. He was Av Beddin of Fez and eventually of Morocco. And the minhag in Fez was that every Friday they would do Atarat Nidarim. Minhag in many places in Morocco. Every Friday after Shacharit they would do Atarat Nidarim. After the Nidarim they would collect money and give it to the poor. One time there was a poor person that came that was known, he was a descendant of Yehuda ben Attar. So Rav Yedidia Monsonego said, I don't understand. We're going to give you money to support yourself. Everybody goes to the kever of your ancestor and asks him to help. So he should be taking care of you. So this poor person got very insulted. He says, not only did I not get any money, but I was embarrassed like this. Well, what am I supposed to do? He was so downtrodden and broken. He went to this Rav Yehuda Monsonego told the story to Rabbi Moshe Amar. He went to the kever of Yehuda ben Attar and he started crying his eyes out. And he's saying, Rabbi Yehuda ben Attar, help me out over here. Look what's going on. Picks up his head and he sees a coin shining right in front of him. He picks it up. He brings it to a blacksmith who told him that this is an old, important point made out of gold that has a lot of worth. He sold it and he was able to rebuild himself. sold it and he was able to rebuild it. So the zchut of Yehuda ben Attar carries on till today. I Baruch Hashem, I'm writing on Magen Avot Choshen Mishpat, so I have the zechut of learning a lot of the teshuvot of Yehuda ben Attar and his psakim, his charifut, his yashrut, and the way that everybody was respected him and were respectful of him was already a legend. As Rabbi Yaakov ibn Sur said, he was gadol ador. It's known that the Or HaChaim HaKadosh went to him for askama for his sfarim, and he's one of those rabbanim that lived in Morocco, was the greatest gadol ador. Not too many people know about him. There is a hilula every year in Fez, Le Zichro. My cousin actually organizes it, and it's it's something that it's around after Shavuot or something. We'll do one over here, Bezat Hashem. So please remember, Jeremy. Please remember, Bezat Hashem. So his words should be Le'ilu Nishmato, Sefer Minchat Yehuda, Andrushim. You could buy it. It's Otzrot HaMagreb, which is of Rabbi Moshe Amar's organization. Chazaku Baruch.